Progress.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode via different live streaming platforms of the Leaders in Value Chain podcast. I am your host, Radu Palamariu. Delighted and happy to have with us today Thomas Erikson, who is a behaviorist. He's a best-selling author of the Surrounded By series. I'm sure many of you watching have read at least some of his books. The series has been translated in over 60 languages, has sold close to 10 million books worldwide. And Thomas has gracefully joined us today. He's a highly sought after public speaker. He gives about 120 keynotes every year on topics on ranging from human behaviors, self-awareness, leadership. He's a mentor to top-level executives and entrepreneurs all over Europe. And it's my pleasure to welcome you. And thanks for joining, Thomas.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm
So
excited.
super. So I know you're joining somewhere in from southern Sweden, enjoying springtime. I wanted to first start because I know that you've not been from the very beginning. Nobody really is a best-selling author or born as a best-selling author. You've had a lot of work that was put into this, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I'd love you to share perhaps on this journey of becoming who you are today some inflection points, some moments where really there was a lot of difference made to become who you are today.
Oh, well, I'm not going to bore you with the early years. I wrote for 20 years without getting published. I'm obviously not a natural talent, I can say as much. Well, there are a couple of interesting moments in my career as an author, I would say. One of them is I have published thrillers. I'm a crime writer,
Oh,
basically. That's where I came from when it comes to writing books. And so I saw myself as the new Stephen King or something. I don't know. We all have dreams, right? We never end up where we thought we should. But I went to my then publisher and said, I have an idea, about communication profiles and colors and you know things about how to interact and how to communicate. And they said, well, what is this? You write thrillers. What are you doing? And I said, no, no, it's going to be called Surrounded by Idiots. It's about a tool I am using as a management consultant. It's a great thing. And it works like this, bam, bam, bam. And I, hard sold it to them, or well, did I? And I said, this is a title. This is the cover design. It's my own design, if you've seen it. And they looked at me with horror in their eyes and said, "This is the stupidest thing we have ever heard. Scrap the whole idea, just scrap it because this is no good. You write crime novels, go back to that." So, but I've never been good at taking advice if I think it's the wrong advice. So I was shopping around in Sweden in all the publishing houses. They basically said the same thing, all of them. I was the idiot. So I had to self-publish the damn book myself. Sorry, technical term. I had to pay for everything. I had no budget for marketing. I drove around the first year with boxes of books in the back of my car and forcing them onto my clients. Take 10 books, take five, take a book.
yeah.
And most people looked at it, a book about idiots. What is this? What are you talking about? So it didn't work at all. And then we finally got it into the airports in Sweden. And it just went boom like this for some strange reason, a book about idiots. So no, it wasn't. And then I was caught. Yeah, I sold. I think first 3 years we sold 1.3 million copies in Sweden.
Wow.
15% of every Swede has a book on its shelf. All of a sudden, I came from nowhere. I'm an overnight success or something, which is kind of interesting, right? So that's my bit of my story.
Well, that's incredible. That's that's incredible. Um, I mean, we've put out a book and we've self-published it. We are about 20,000 copies. So I need to get some of your grit, and and push forward. Um, Maybe another question that pops to mind, especially because you wrote, you were in this thriller fiction side. What what inside you said, okay, look, this is something that people really need to. I feel that it's so important, it's so valuable. There must have been some feedback or talking to people that you felt so confident that this book, Surrounded by Idiots, needed to be there because it would help the masses.
Well, as I mentioned, I was a management consultant at the time, giving leadership trainings and working with different kind of profiling. Amongst many things, the an updated version, let's say, of the disc profile. We added the four colors, red, yellow, green, and blue, because of pedagogical reasons. It's easier to remember red and yellow profile instead of a high D or an I with a low C, or an ENTJ personality, or sorry, INTJ, no, IENTPK, no, red and yellow. There you go. So, and people said, this is good. This is useful. We understand it doesn't explain everything about me or about my staff, my team members. We understand that, but correctly used, it actually gives us hope for how to collaborate better. And I said to myself, if people within top management teams and sales reps and so on, if they use this and they find it beneficial, why wouldn't anybody? So maybe I should put a book together. That was actually the starting point. So I had in the back of my mind, I think I planned a book, I don't know, a couple of years, 3 4 5 years. I don't even recall that
Yeah.
actually. And I mean, the feedback I'm actually to be serious for a moment. The feedback I'm receiving from all over the globe is, this is good, this is useful, and it comes from all walks of life, all kinds of people, from young teenagers up to pensioners. They say this is very useful, and people use it when it comes to sales, when it comes to negotiation skills, when it comes to leadership management, many different things, and you can use it to just collaborate with anyone if you just have the basics. And so I think I dare to trust my instincts, let's say. I mean, I'm no smarter than the next guy. I probably have not much down at all, but it felt good, and I tested it, and it worked out pretty okay, I would say. So yeah.
No, love the principle, right? I mean, of listening, because you had the feedback, and this reminds me many years ago, about 15 years ago. So, I listened to there's the body language book. I believe you. I mean, it was one of the first books that I read that many years ago. It's written by a guy called Alan Pease from Australia. Anyways, I had the chance to listen to him give a speech, and he was telling similar to you. He was saying, "Look, brother, when I first put out this book, everybody said, who cares about body language? Like nobody cares. But whenever I would present, people would tell me, wow, this is very useful. So I'm like, wait a second. People are telling me that it's useful. I mean, I get it that you from the publishing side don't think it's useful, but I'll push because I have an audience. I have potential clients that are telling me it's useful. And I think that therein lies the principle, right? Which is one, grit and perseverance and overnight success that took you, what, 20 years or 15 years of practice and waking up at 3 a.m. to practice writing. And two, listen, as long as you've listened to your audience or to your potential clients that tell you there's a need, there's a problem there, you're pretty sure that you're onto something.
Indeed, well put. And I mean, there is a thing called gut feeling. As I'm interested, I mean, as you said in the introduction, I'm a behaviorist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a behaviorist, which is slightly different. But I read a lot of interesting studies, and there is a thing called gut feeling. You can't measure it properly, but actually, the sixth sense, female intuition, these things, they do exist. What are they? How do they work? Well, who knows? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. But they exist, right? And
Yeah.
gut feeling is something that we should dare to, let's say, trust a little bit more. If it feels right, it might be right, and you have to test things. You have to try things out. Not going to sound like some sort of cliche here, but if you never try stuff, you're never going to learn anything. And sometimes when it feels bad, it is indeed bad. But the
Mm,
thing is, what I have learned is the experts are most of the time wrong. Within the
mm,
publishing industry, they are mostly wrong, because afterwards, and this is not about bragging and boosting my ego, even though it works like that as well. But there's other stuff which I didn't tell you. When the when Surrounded by Idiots had became a huge success in Sweden, they wallpapered the whole nation with a book. So I got tired to see it myself, really. But the thing is this, I went to my literary agent and said, okay, let's translate it, let's publish it in different languages. And they said, "Oh, we can't do that. That's impossible because all local markets have their own experts. They won't read a book from a Swedish guy, especially not one about idiots. Don't do it. Don't go there." And I said, "But what if we did that anyway?" So and I was nagging on their backs for I don't know 2 years, and then they finally closed a couple of deals, and then another one, and then another one, and then in English, obviously, and there you go. And now 60 languages. Not that the book is super duper unique, but you need to sort of pay attention to this gut feeling because people are different. That is correct. But they are also the same at the same time. And the difference is that we can see from an individual in Romania or in Singapore or in New Zealand or in India or in Canada or in Poland or in Sweden, they are kind of the same.
Mm.
I receive feedback from all continents at the same time on a weekly basis, including Antarctica. Yes, that is actually quite cool. I am wondering who is down there emailing me. But the thing is this, they have the same reflections on the topic when it comes to how to communicate and how to let's say how to read an extroverted profile and how to understand each other. They have the same questions, the same issues. Oh, I'm so blue or I'm so yellow. My boss is so this and that or whatever. And that tells me that people are, even though the cultures might vary a lot around the globe, obviously they do, and that's fascinating. But on an individual level, people are very, very similar. Now I'm going to sound like a complete fool when I say the following. I did not understand the similarities should be that huge. It's definitely a matter of Homo sapiens. Because when you get to know one on a personal level, you figure this guy, he's actually the same as just anyone. And the differences in personalities are the same. The
Yes.
fluctuation between different kinds of personality types are the same, literally everywhere.
Yes.
I think that's super cool.
And I
And
need
it's
to,
all based on gut feeling.
yeah, trust your gut feeling. Here's another lesson. Um,
I
I
think
need
so.
to, and I know that you put it in the book, right? And obviously, whoever hasn't read the book, How to Deal with Idiots, I encourage you to do so. But I think there's a cool story for you to share about the title because again, it is counterintuitive. It to the publisher and say, why would somebody want to read about idiots? It sounds so negative and so on, right? And still you pushed ahead. And I think a lot of the success of definitely part of the success of the book is the title. I mean, surely, I mean, a very good title will attract people, whereas a boring one, nobody will pick up the book, right? So maybe share a little bit how you push through with that title.
You mean where it came from,
Yes,
or
yes,
yes? Well, the phrase "I'm surrounded by idiots" that's not very new. We all been in those situations. We've all been in those meetings. Leaving the room thinking, "Am I the only one who gets it? What's wrong with these people?" And sometimes you feel you're surrounded by idiots. Interestingly enough, some people are surrounded by more idiots than others. That's interesting, right? Some people are some sort of idiot magnets, and I would love to address those people, who thinks that everybody else is an idiot. It's like the story with, we all knew this guy when we were youngsters, right? He went from girl to girl, and they were all strange or crazy, or she couldn't cope, and she was weird, and she was mean, and who is the lowest common denominator in all of these stories? Could it be you? Could it be you? And some people are go through life like this, but the I mean, the idea comes from this Swedish entrepreneur, really, really successful. I was visiting him as a young man, and he said that he was surrounded by idiots. Department A, fools. Department B, idiots. Department C, don't even get me started. And I remember me asking him who brought in all the idiots. Uh, that didn't work at all. He actually kicked me out. That's actually a true story. And the second meeting, I managed to book a second meeting, and then he started by saying, "This time I have not left the rifle in the back of my car." I don't know, but it got me thinking: if this brilliant, successful, famous, actually here in Sweden at least, and quite wealthy man still feels bad about people surrounding him, there's got to be something in here. So no, this recognition in the title that we feel that we are surrounded by it is when it's actually about misunderstandings and useless conflicts. Um, but yes, the title works. It does work. We were talking to a British publisher many years ago before translated into English. Another funny story. And this gentleman, very distinct gentleman in tweed, so British. Oh, he was lovely. But the tea process was excruciating. But anyways, but he came in and said, the title, I don't know, surrounded by idiots. That could be intimidating for some people. We shouldn't go there. What about we make it dark navy blue cover design and white letters that says communication manual. What do you say? And I said, I don't think so. Because as a marketeer and a sales guy, I don't think so. No, no, no. So the title works. It's a bit of a marketing thing. You get, and actually, I can prove that too because the book is actually selling better in physical bookstores than it does online. It's usually in Sweden, it's quite the other way around because online sales is huge here and audio is huge, but you see it on a table in a bookstore. You have to pick it up and tell yourself, what is this? At least you have to turn it around. So that would be my marketing take on that one. So, but I think
Exactly.
still it's an interesting book. So
Yes.
the content maybe it doesn't
I mean,
speak
and
for
I
itself,
think that,
but it's sort of generic, I would say.
but
Sorry.
therein lies, I think, another brilliance of what you did in because and DISC, disc is used in many companies, and I think or MBTI or whatever, right? I mean, we do exec search as part of almost all executive search processes. They test people, right? They test to see what's your tendencies, this and that, whatever tool they use. I think the brilliance of your book and the way that you describe the model is that you made it extremely simple. I mean, I gave up on MBTI because I could no longer remember the ETA. I mean, all the four-letter combination, and it's not that there's that many, it's 16 of them, yeah, but it's just
Yeah.
like brainy. Like I'm not, colors easy. Yeah. You have four colors, easy. You can describe it. You said it to a teenager. You can describe it to an it doesn't matter. Like it's just we get it, right? It's intuitive.
Right.
So I think therein lies another brilliance of the book of why it's so successful because you explain something in a language in colors that people can immediately relate and remember.
Exactly. And I think that goes for any system you would like to use it. If it's some sort of, well, any type of profiling, if you look for drivers or motivational factors or real personality testing, with the 600 questions and multiple optional answers and so on and so forth. But I rather use you have the big five theory, also very useful, very good, probably more precise, but that measures personality. This doesn't measure personality. It describes behaviors, which is actually not the same thing for all the technical people out there. But the thing is, I'd rather put my name on a useful tool that you can start using day one than I go for a 100% exact one because there are obviously I can give you Excel charts and I can give you a lot of data and I can show you the studies that has been made and I can give you validity studies and reliability studies, but that's exceptionally boring to a vast majority of all the people on the planet. Most people will not take this to them, so they won't start using whatever it is the book would be about. And I think it's if you understand 75% of the guy sitting next to you, you will be a winner instead of saying, I haven't read the right book yet, so I'm going to be me for the rest of my life. And then you're going to mess it up. I'm not going to adapt based on something that I don't really believe in. I can see he's an extrovert, but who knows what that really is? I'm an introvert. I'm not going to go extrovert. So and you can do whatever you want. But I think ex- preciseness has a value. I'm not saying you should be sloppy when it comes to dealing with people, but if you understand the basics, it's going to take you far. So I usually, and it's actually for all aspiring authors out there, it's easier to write an exact book because you can just read the Excel sheets. To write in a manner that is actually making people read 300 pages of some sort of non-fiction book, it's actually quite difficult. That is what I'm still struggling with quite a lot with every new title, to make it really, let's say, easy to wrap your head around as a reader. I saw an interesting figure, don't know where I picked it up, that most non-fiction books if it's pop psychology or whatever, uh, it's usually read the first three chapters, and then people put it down. That tells you something. You have to address your audience in a way that make them curious and make them interested. Anyone who needs more data or more deeper studies, absolutely, I recommend you to read another book or go online, go to YouTube or take a lecture or get yourself a mentor. I recommend all of that, and I do all of those things as well. But you need to sort of open the door a little bit and open your eyes to the world of behavior analysis, and it's fascinating. You will save yourself so much headache actually if you just know the basics.
Yes,
So
yes.
yes.
And when you look and you deal with CEOs and you're an advisor to and mentor and a coach, I assume to CEOs, any principles, any commonalities when it comes to, and you talk about the four personality types, you talk about the four colors, yeah, um, in building high performing teams, in any sort of top things that they should be mindful of. I'm sure it comes across also in the book, but also from your observations of dealing with this C-level executives.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, diversity has been sort of a word that has been used these days a bit very unprecise, I would say. When it comes to behavioral types, diversity is absolutely the way to go. If you have only extroverts in the team, it's going to be a lot of energy, a lot of new stuff and novelties and entrepreneurial and ideas, but no one's going to take any notes. No one's going to write the emails and make the calls and so on and so forth. So you need also introverted people to to wrap it up and organize stuff. This is just one dimension, but all the extroverts get along really, really well, as do all the introverts. This is just one dimension amongst many dimensions, but it's a really important one because extroverted managers, they recruit extroverted people because they can mirror themselves in this guy or this woman and say, oh, he's like me, she's like me. Oh, that has to be a good person, right? I see the resume now. We can fill in the gaps. We can train them here and there. But it's a good person. And while I understand this notion, you can't change someone's personality. You will probably not change anyone's behaviors very much. So you need to recruit the right people. So to look for that is a good thing. However, if you don't pay attention, you will recruit only people who will be like yourself. And there's nothing wrong with you if you're an introvert or an extrovert, if you're a task-oriented person or the people's person. There's nothing wrong with you, but you need more perspectives than your own. That is just the way it is. It sounds like stupid to say it, but still 2024, these things are not being these things does not go, let's say, smoothly. Still, we haven't learned this. Still, for some reason the human factor will be in there. It has nothing to do with male or female or from where you are or your education, but you need basic behavioral traits. You need someone who is precise, but you also need someone who is creative. That is usually, I'm saying usually, I could be wrong, but usually not the same person, right? It's usually two different people. And when you put them together, they will figure out how to use the creative stuff and put it on a piece of paper and then go do it. And to make someone do it, you need the one who is more action oriented. And you need someone who keeps the team together and makes everybody feel okay. You need all of that. What you do not need is a diversity when it comes to motivators, which is the drivers, why they are there, why they do the way they do it. Because if they are there for different reasons, then
Mm,
you're going to end up in trouble. So you
yes,
need them to come into your team based on the same presumption. We want to create the same stuff. Then we act differently, but we are here for the same reason. That's important.
yes. And one of the books that you wrote was how to deal with bad bosses. Now, ultimately, in our careers, the boss is the main factor. The earlier, probably the more impactful, but all throughout, the boss plays an incredibly important um, part.
Indeed,
Any
indeed.
advice
Water
that
is always pouring downwards, right?
exactly exactly. Um, Any particular advice? We have a lot of corporate professionals watching this. How do you deal with perceived bad bosses? Again, principles, and obviously, I recommend everybody to read the book, but sort of common lines that come up.
Well, how do I deal with bad bosses? Well, I'm going to give you some numbers here. I can't prove them, but my sense of this is about the following, based on 25 years experience when it comes to management training, leadership trainings. I have coached about 5,000 people when it comes to leadership, not individually all of them, but train them and try to make them better. I would say 10% of the managers in the world are excellent ones. Probably they have a bit of a natural talent for leadership in general. Then you have 70% who are sort of well, average, we can live with those people. We can train and we can lift them up a little bit, but they don't harass their staff members, and they might not be exceptionally cruel or something. But then at the bottom of the pyramid, you have 20% who are so bad, so
Yeah.
lousy. They are not even managers. So these are evil people who are completely in the wrong place in their world. They should be kicked out and never to be returned again. They really, really, really seriously mess things up. Never hire those people. They could be bullies, they could be aggressive, passive aggressive, they could be control freaks, micromanagers. They are really, really killing all the positive energy. That would be my take. If you take those people out, you will save most of the organizations just by eliminating the worst ones
Mm.
because water is pouring downwards. But I think one way that I have found, which is actually why the book you mentioned, Surrounded by Bad Bosses, that is actually two books in one. Because the second part of the book is called Surrounded by Lazy Employees. Because if you scroll on LinkedIn, you're going to get new managerial advice, every third minute or something. Oh, this is the new spreadsheet for do this and do that, and this is how we should do it, and you should never do this, and you should always do that, and yeah, 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 fine. If I would supposed to do all of those things, I would be, I don't know, living in the year 3000. But the thing is this: when I wrote Surrounded by Bad Bosses, I thought I had trained a lot of leaders, and I have a couple of things to say when it comes to management and leadership. All right, so I'm going to write a book about how to deal with employees. So I wrote the book called Surrounded by Lazy Employees, because how do you deal with people? Because there are also lazy employees. It's not popular to talk about it, but
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, not
It's a two-way
everybody's
street.
performing well. But the thing is this: when I was finishing that book, Surrounded by Lazy Employees, I saw, I think it was actually on Discovery Channel some years ago, a documentary about Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady of the United Kingdom, Great Britain, when she was running for her second period as a prime minister way back in time. And you can have any opinions about Margaret Thatcher, but she went to this political advisor and she said, How should I be re-elected?" And he said, the previous time you forgot about the unemployed. Those
Mm.
are actually 10% of the population, huge piece of the population. You shouldn't forget about those. And she said, okay. So she went for a second opinion. And the next guy, he said, well, the rest of them are 90%. You know, you could have opinions about that attitude, absolutely. But she focused on people with jobs and she won and whatever. But that got me thinking when it comes to leadership, basically, let's say 10% are managers in some kind of team leading position somewhere in the hierarchy, right? And the rest 90% are the majority. So addressing a book about leadership to 10%, maybe that's not enough. So then I wrote Surrounded by Bad Bosses for the employees, for the staff members, so they would understand what is your leader trying to do here? What are they trying to achieve together
Yeah.
with you? Why is it so easy to point finger at the manager and say, oh, he's a lousy leader, he's a bad boss? Instead of also understanding he or she is actually struggling with things that you might haven't comprehended yet. So if both parts in an organization read both books, they would actually have something really fruitful to discuss, I would say. I have no idea if this is happening, but that is the point of making two books in the same book. I think that's the attitude you should choose. Talk to people about the leadership, talk to people about how you talk to people, communicate about the communication. Because if everybody gets on board, they will understand, I don't want to be a manager. That's too hard, but I can help him help me or help her to help me. Then all of a sudden you're sort of opening the gates to, I would say, a lot of future success. That's
Yes,
my take on it.
yes. And a question that quite a few people asked: do you believe there are inherent, and you talk about the four colors, right? The red, the yellow, green, and blue, each with strengths, each with development areas, or let's say weaknesses in all fairness. Are there certain ones that you say, okay, more likely that the leaders will come from this one? And also, if there's less leaders coming from another one, are there some points that those particular colors can address?
Absolutely. The red behavior, the dominant factor, extroverted, task-oriented people, they tend to rise to the top, not because they might be the best leaders, but they have sharper elbows. They can take a fight, and they know it's lonely at the top. They're fine, you know. They don't have to be loved by anyone because they have a job to do. Some of them are excellent, some of them are not so good because they can take it too far and be a bit harsh on people.
Mm,
You also see a lot of yellow leaders, the extroverted people who can speak for themselves. So they are usually sort of rising like the cream in the milk, so to speak. Some of them are really, really good and some not so good. It depends a little bit on the organization. Usually, when it comes to technical occupations like engineers or scientists for that matter, or where you have to, let's say within the STEM fields and where you end up in your career, they usually hire the best specialist to be the manager, which means you have the best specialists out of the specialist sector now into leadership, which is a completely different job. That is a whole different occupation. Leading 10 specialists is not the same thing as acting as a specialist. Therefore, I would not recommend doing that. But that also gives you a lot of, I would say, blue leaders. Let's say within the IT management, you find a lot of really analytical, precise, exact, let's say, engineerial types, right? And they are brilliant and they know
yeah.
everything. But are they necessarily the best leaders? Because that's about human capacity. That's about communication and collaboration and to connect and understand emotions and stuff, understanding motivational factors and communication skills. That is not dealing with IT issues. So therefore, they might struggle. It depends a little bit on where they are coming from and what interest they really have on developing their leadership skills. I did not mention the green types, right? They are in majority. 45% of the population in the industrialized world scores highly on green. Not only green, but green and usually something else, green and yellow, green and blue. They do end up in leading positions, not as often as the other colors. I have a theory. I think it's because they don't like to be in the center of things. They do not enjoy the spotlight. And if you
Mm,
have a managing position, people will look at you. People will stare at you and look at you for answers. You would like to be one in the team. So they are mostly okay with being a team member. Not saying I haven't met lots of really good, excellent green leaders as well, but I don't see them as often as when it comes to the other colors. That would be my take on this.
yes.
I hope I answered
Um,
the question.
and we discussed a little bit offline, and I want to bring it online now about the engineers, the manufacturing, the supply chain, the STEM oriented, let's say, a large chunk of our audience. Um, they tend to be like that. Supply chain has been by and large in the spotlight in the last couple of years because of different things that went wrong. We had ships stuck in Suez. Now we have, some people that are angry in Yemen, and there's other things that are happening globally. So it keeps being in
Yeah.
the forefront. That also means that these people that are driving and making things happen across global supply chains are in front of CEOs, in front of the board. And it also means that a lot of times they're training by default of being precise, analytical, engineering like, type of characters. Blue, I guess, is closest to some, sometimes green. It just doesn't help in particular, right? So any pieces of advice in terms of how do you deal with the C level, the board, the people in leadership positions, so that to best get their attention and to influence them.
You mean as an engineer, let's say the stereotypical blue type, how do I reach out to the next level to make them pay attention? Well, that's an excellent question, Radu, or anyone who asked that one. I would say it doesn't really matter who you are. You will always be in minority, right? Most people that you meet will be wired in another way, in a different way. And that's fine. That's diversity when it comes to different perspectives and attitudes and so on. So that's just the way it is. The worst thing you can do as an introvert, task-oriented person, let's say an engineer or an accountant or whatever, you love the numbers. You're dominating the Excel championship totally. You know how to use, all the functions in Excel, which I think is impossible, but someone probably does that. But anyways, if you use your own logical reasoning within yourself and think, okay, I need to present the facts. Okay, that's fine. Facts are good. However, you would like to give details. You shouldn't do that. You should start with the bottom line. Start with the result. Start with the proposal. Based on all of this, blah 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 blah. I would suggest the following: turn it upside down and start with the suggestion. I think we should turn everything 180 degrees. We should, do this. We should do that. We need to implement a new system. We need to do the following. Bam, bam, bam. Now you have their attention, right? And then they will ask questions. Okay, how do you know this? Well, let me show you the numbers because, and then you can prove yourself. But if you start to prove yourself and 2 hours later present the solution, the room will be empty. The bodies will might be there, but no one is listening. That is just the way it is. And you know it because you've been in those meetings as well. And when you leave the meeting, you have the feeling of what? Being surrounded by idiots. There you go. So just start with the punchline.
Yes,
That usually does it. And then you can have an interesting, beneficial discussion.
yes, yes.
But the
What?
details are boring most people up in the hierarchy. They have no time for details. If they
Mm,
trust you, they trust that you have a check on the details.
mm, precisely. Um, and as we are approaching the end of this, Thomas, wanted to ask you a little bit. Many young people are listening to this. Any top pieces of advice that helped you the most? Any principles that you follow that you say, okay, this has has led you to where you are today?
Oh, advice to young people depends on how young. I gave a TED talk in Athens last year about Gen Z or Gen Z, depending on what accent you have. I think it has never been easy to be young. Maybe it's even harder now. That could actually be the case. Having that said, I do not pity young people. I don't feel sorry for anyone because that's not very helpful, right? I think you need to stand up straight with your shoulders back. You need to actually step up a little bit, and we need to make room for you. I think the worst thing that we as old, I mean, I'm a Gen X myself. I'm born in the 60s. You see it from my face. I've been around, right? But so I forgot a lot of stuff, and I'm not updated on everything. That's absolutely the case. But I have life experience. And what I have learned so far is that things take time. If you want to succeed, you're never going to buy a Lamborghini after 4 months in any business. If you see a social media influencer who is, drinking soft drinks on the Riviera, no, 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 no. Intellectually that is not the case. That is not true. He's not actually really that. That's green screen and who knows what else. I have a quote from Warren Buffett, which I love really much, and the quote goes like this: "You cannot make one baby in 1 month by making 9 women pregnant." I hope I didn't offend anyone, but some things take time. I think Warren is correct there. You need to pay attention and put in the work there, and then you will succeed because most people will not put in the work. You can excel and rise above most of the other competitors, regardless of where you are, if you just put in the work. And if you're willing to take feedback and identify who are the right people to listen to. Some people are good for you, some people are bad for you. Some people will try to stop you by giving you stupid advice. Don't fall for that, but test everything that you can put your hands on. Test and try and learn and learn and learn, and be willing to recalibrate everything all the time until you reach 30. Then you probably have it figured out, I would say. That would
Yeah,
be my
exactly. Love it.
spontaneous answer to that.
Love it. And
Makes
final
sense?
makes a lot of sense. Final curiosity, because I was reading that your wife is also a very successful author, and she writes extensively
Yes.
as well. So you're really a
Yes.
family of writers, right? So any tips and tricks, that did this yin and yang with your wife? Did you bounce each other some ideas? I'm just curious if any stories there.
She's a good example of use your gut feeling because we met at a Swedish book fair 10 years ago, actually, this fall, and got an idea. And we started to write together, and now we are married. What do you know? So trust your gut feeling. Well, when it comes to writing books, if you have an idea, that's good. I started as a young man writing books as we started this conversation, just having no plan at all because I listen to the wrong people. Just tap along and see what happens. That's usually bad advice because it's going to be really wild in there. So create some sort of plan and then just test it, try it.
Eh,
Even the longest books are written one word at a time. uh, Make it a routine. If you have something to say, if it's a fictional story or if it's non-fiction, or you want to share your story, some sort of biographical stuff, put it in there. Make a routine. Write for 20 minutes a day. That's better than writing 3 hours a week because the routine is what's gonna make you a winner here. You
hmm.
have to build this routine, otherwise you're not gonna make it. It's so much work writing a book, and you don't know if anyone ever's going to read it. So it's unpaid work, but if you believe in it, trust your gut feeling and just go for it.
Love it. Love it. Some real gold nuggets, Thomas. So I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing all these great stories. And for those of you watching, listening to this, please check out Thomas if you haven't already, and have a look at his books because there's many gems of wisdom in there. Thomas, big pleasure having you, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.